Hello, and welcome to the National Treasury's 40 Church Square building, a nearly 100-year-old building. Today, I want us to step inside the steel doors of this building to see what happens here and how your money is managed. Come, join me. We're now inside the Budget Council room, where the Minister of Finance will typically meet with a range of officials, leaders, MECs for finance, and even your local mayor to discuss the nation's public finances and to make sure that everyone is working in a smooth and joined-up manner when it comes to the nation's money matters. My name is Keta Dlamini, and in preparation for Budget Day, I wanted to spend a few brief moments explaining South Africa's budget framework to you and how it affects you and your pocketbook. Many people think the budget is only the speech that the minister delivers in Parliament on Budget Day. But important as that speech is, South Africa's budget framework is much more than that. It's actually built on four key pillars: the medium-term budget policy statement, the medium-term expenditure framework, the fiscal framework, and the division of revenue. The process of putting together the budget starts with the publication of the MTF guidelines all the way back in June last year, and only ends when the President signs the budget bills, the bills being presented by the Minister in Parliament. The medium-term budget policy statement, the MTBPS, sets the stage for the upcoming budget. It outlines the government's goals, explains the current economic outlook, and shows how much money will be available for the next 3 years. The MTBPS also highlights the choices the country has when deciding how to fund key priorities. The statement is an important part of the budget process because it promotes openness and invites you, the members of the South African public, to engage with the government on these decisions. Let us start with something really important to understand South Africa's budget: the fiscal framework. When we talk about the budget, we're also talking about the fiscal framework in action. So, what is it? In simple terms, the fiscal framework is the government's complete financial plan for the year and the upcoming years. It's where the government carefully figures out a few essential things for the upcoming financial year. The fiscal framework actively estimates, first, how much revenue government expects to raise. This means calculating all revenue, especially from taxes, and any extra sources of funds. Second, the framework provides a headline estimate of government's expenditure. This actively plans for spending, covering both regular items and any other unexpected costs. Third, the framework estimates government borrowing if planned spending is more than expected revenue. Fourth, because government borrows, we are required to estimate how much borrowing will cost and how much money is needed to service government's existing debt. And finally, the fiscal framework indicates the contingency reserve. It sets aside a rainy day fund, money specifically for emergencies and unexpected events that might arise. Essentially, the framework is the foundation. It's the comprehensive financial roadmap and makes the budget possible and ensures responsible and sustainable budgeting. Every year, we present the fiscal framework presented for the budget. For example, the framework for the MTBPS 2024 will serve as the budget 2025 framework. But it's not just copy and paste. We adjust spending based on revenue projections, ensuring we're realistic about how much government can afford. When we talk about crafting the national budget, one key ingredient goes unnoticed: macroeconomic forecasts. They're the foundation of fiscal planning, helping us understand where the economy is headed so we can make informed decisions about spending and revenue. Here's how it works. We update our macroeconomic forecasts 3 times a year before the October medium-term budget policy statement, or MTBPS, and once more before the February budget. Each time, we revisit the data based on the latest information from the South African Reserve Bank's quarterly bulletin. These forecasts focus on 4 key variables: real GDP, which tells us how much the economy is growing after adjusting for inflation; nominal GDP, which measures the economy size without the adjustment for GDP inflation; GDP inflation, which tracks how prices for goods and services are changing within the economy. And then finally, the consumer price index inflation, which measures how the cost of living is shifting for ordinary South African citizens. Why does this matter? Because every rand we plan to spend and every rand we expect to collect in revenue depends on these numbers. Strong, accurate forecasts help us build a budget that's realistic, resilient, and responsive to the economy's needs. Once a year in February, the Minister of Finance announces new tax proposals in the budget speech. Alongside the speech, we publish the budget review, which provides more detail on the tax proposals announced in the budget, changes into tax legislation, and broader tax policy decisions. The National Revenue Fund is the central account where all national government's revenues are deposited. It's established under Section 213 of the South African Constitution. Simply put, any money that the government receives through taxes, duties, and levies flows into this fund unless an Act of Parliament allows for an exception. Withdrawals from the NRF are strictly regulated. The government can only withdraw money if Parliament approves it through an Appropriation Act or it is a direct charge against the NRF as provided for by the Constitution or legislation. For example, the equitable share allocated to provinces is a direct charge. It's automatically paid without needing a new budget vote each time. The South African Revenue Service is responsible for collecting taxes, duties, and levies. Once collected, these funds are deposited into the National Revenue Fund. This process ensures that government has the money it needs to operate and deliver services to the public. Finally, the Public Finance Management Act outlines how the NRF is managed. It ensures prompt deposits of collected revenue, strict conditions for withdrawals, and oversight by the National Treasury to ensure funds are available to meet government's ongoing obligations. Now that we've covered revenue, let's shift our focus to another key part of the budget, how we determine baseline for non-expenditure. This is the core of government spending, covering everything except debt servicing costs. Since 1997, South Africa has used a multi-year budgeting system, the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework. We don't just budget for 1 year, we budget for 3 years at a time. But here's the smart part. We revise these plans every year. This is called a rolling 3-year framework. The February budget, which the minister delivers, is the financial plan for the year, to set out how government will pay for the government's goals. Many of these goals have already been outlined by the President in the State of the Nation address. We also plan for our ongoing commitments to the health of our citizens, well-being, education of citizens, the country's roads and rail, and then the nation's defense. The minister will explain where government will get the money to pay for these plans. The minister will also tell you how that money is divided among national departments, provinces, and municipalities. When the Minister of Finance tables the budget in Parliament, it is not the final step. In fact, it marks the beginning of an important process where Parliament, civil society, and you, the public, can get involved. First, Parliament reviews the budget. Finance committees in both houses of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces review the budget. They focus on key issues, amongst other things, the economy, revenue, government debt, and provide a detailed report which the minister must respond to. Appropriation committees examine details, how money is allocated to departments, provinces, and programs. Public hearings are held where citizens, organizations, and experts can share their views on the budget framework. Groups, including NEDLAC, civil society, and ordinary South African citizens make recommendations to the National Treasury through this parliamentary process. After the committees have done their work, the whole House has a proper discussion and debate about the budget. They talk about what they've heard and listened to from the public and from the committees. After the debate, Parliament votes on each of the budget bills which were tabled, and then these bills go to the President's desk for signature. Once the president signs the budget, it officially becomes the law of the land. And that, in a nutshell, is the budget process. We have a busy but exciting few months ahead of us. I encourage you to follow along by watching the debates on National Treasury social media platforms, including YouTube and Twitter. You can also download a copy of the budget review on the National Treasury website, and of course, visit our portal vulekamali.gov.za. There you'll gain a deeper understanding of how the budget works. You can see where taxes are used and how, through careful public finance management, we are building a better South Africa together.